Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Rich Politics. We are live tonight. That's right, we're on Facebook and YouTube. So please share the broadcast with as many people as you can. And you can comment tonight and you can leave messages. You can ask questions of my panel. Man, this is the first time that I've had so many guests on, and the technical issues I've had have been just crazy tonight. But never mind that. Listen, we've got a great show lined up, and my guests tonight are going to interest you. I know it's going to be great. I really do. I don't know about you, but I've had enough of lockdown. I got 5 kids living at home here with us. Of course, they're mine. They wouldn't be living here otherwise. And it's been a terrible time for a lot of people around the country. I know people have had it much harder than myself. I get that. In fact, it's 335 days since we went into lockdown. I know we've been out of jail and in jail and out of jail, whatever you want to call it, but that's what's happened. And I'm going to ask the questions tonight, really. What impact have the lockdowns had on people's well-being, on the economy, and so much more? What about our civil liberties, being told what we can and cannot do? Are they being taken away? Why are gyms closed? Should they be open when the transmission rate is so low? Clearly, you can catch virus more in a supermarket than you can in a gym. These are real questions. And what about our hospitality industry, with many pubs will never, ever recover, never be able to open again, and our tourism industry as well? Well, there's so many big questions that you've all got. But before we do that, can you do me a favor? Make sure you share the broadcast with as many people as you can. To all of my YouTube subscribers, thank you for tuning in tonight, and on Facebook as well. Don't forget to share the broadcast. Well, tonight I'm not alone because my Well, good evening and welcome to Rich Politics. Please forgive the interruption if you're on Facebook. Kai, I don't know what happened there. I mean, my internet went down.
Welcome back.
Oh, but listen, everybody watching, listen now, right? This is a Welshman in Wales, right, with internet. You realise how hard it is to get broadband in the valleys, right? So please forgive us, bear with us. If you're watching on Facebook, share the broadcast. Kai, welcome to Rich Politics. Thanks for co-hosting tonight. Are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so right, okay, let's get down to it, because we've had some interruptions tonight. We've got some wonderful guests on the panel. We're going to be discussing a whole number of topics. We're going to talk, of course, about it's 335 days since we went into lockdown. Boris made those big announcements. We're going to show in a few moments the impact it's had on people's mental health and well-being, and of course the economy, our civil liberties being under attack, why gyms are closed, which seems crazy, Kai, doesn't it, given the transmission rate is so very, very low. Absolutely. And of course the hospitality industry. Anybody else missing the pub? Man, I'm missing the pub. Not the beer, it's the people. It's the people that make it, and it's driving me nuts. I don't know about you, Kai. How do you feel about it?
Oh, I am itching to get back on the road and get back to work, and I can't because all the hotels are shut. So it's, I mean, this is ridiculous. And I know your internet had a few problems, so yet again, another failure of the Welsh government.
Let's blame the Welsh government for everything, shall we? That's what we want to do. But yeah, so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in tonight. We've got an important subject. It is quite serious, actually, because lots of people have been contacting me on the show to talk about the impact that these lockdowns have had on them, on their mental health, Kai. A lot of people are facing all kinds of challenges. We know that domestic abuse cases are on the up. Suicide cases are on the up as well. All of these figures are quite startling, really. Thousands have been pushed into poverty as a result. Many people have lost their jobs. Businesses will never open again. I mean, it sounds like a bleak picture, doesn't it? Children have missed out on proper education for months and months, and 1 in 6 children now say that they, according to latest figures, are suffering with mental health issues. This really is a serious situation, and yet the question really has to be asked is, in the name of protecting the NHS and saving lives, has this been worth it? Well, I got a number of guests on the panel tonight, but first of all, the guest I want to introduce you first is somebody that's gone viral on Twitter. He posted a video the other night, touched my heart, really. He's a working man, a businessman, a family man, and he just shared how he felt about the lockdowns and the impact that it's had on him. Kai, did you see that? Gary Dempsey, a former professional footballer, the Irishman, did you see that video?
I did, and Gary has touched the heart and the nerve of the nation. Everything he said is so true, and I know he was speaking particularly concerning the Irish government, but it's a picture of countries around the world going through barbaric and avoidable circumstances because of what is happening with this pandemic. And I think what really struck me is the passion of which he spoke, because it's a man that has been deeply affected, not just as an individual, a husband, a father, but as a businessman as well. And there's no end in sight to this, which is a complete 180 from the position the government took 335 days ago when all of this began. So
yeah, we're going to come to that if you want. So I just want to play the clip so people can see. Now we've kind of bleeped out the actual swear words, but actually I'd like to leave them in, but you never know, YouTube might take the video down, so we just leave them in, but actually it really touched the nerve, because it's how most of us feel in the country. It's the forgotten people, the people who are not vulnerable, the people who are not, potentially going to die from the virus. We're like
they're not forgotten, though, Rich.
No,
this is the thing. They're completely ignored. We're not forgotten. We're completely ignored, and there's a big difference.
Yeah, well, listen, let's watch the clip, and then we're going to get Gary on.
Good morning. Good morning, guys. Lent with Dempsey continues. Just done my 5k. But I'm hurting today, guys. I'm really hurting today. I just want to ask. I want to ask the Irish government, what about us? When do we matter? What about 95% of the population that this virus doesn't affect? Do we not matter, no? What about our kids? What about small businesses that are going to be closed now? If we go to the 1st of May, going to be closed for 12, 14 months. What about us? I am sick of it now. I'm absolutely sick of it. How do they expect us to survive? To pay our mortgage, to pay our rates on our business. 7 grand. 7 grand and €203 a week. That's what I got off the government for being closed for 14 months if we go to May the 1st. Huh? Do we not matter? Does my son not matter? 13 years of age, in his bedroom, 3-4 hours a day doing homeschooling. Can't go meet his mates for a kickabout on the pitch. Can't go for a game of golf. Can't cycle past 5k. Does he not matter, no? Or my daughter, who used to do gymnastics 4 or 5 times a week, 11 years of age, who now is a shadow of her former self. She doesn't matter, does she not? 95% and 98% survival rate for this virus. And you're destroying the country and destroying the people. Micheál Martin, Leo Varadkar, you should be ashamed of yourselves. I don't know where we go from here. I don't know what the answer, but lockdowns are not working. They're not working. Clearly they're not working. So open up the country and give us a chance. Let us try and survive, man. The getting on Twitter from people, young people who are telling me they can't do it. They can't do another 9 weeks. Do they not matter? Do they not matter at all to anybody in this country? Old people. I had a client tell me his dad and his mum and dad are setting the alarm clock to stay in the bed longer so they don't have to be awake for as long during the day.
Well, sorry, a few technical issues there, but here's the man himself, Gary Dempsey, joining us tonight live on Rich Politics. Gary, thank you for agreeing to come on the show. I really, really appreciate it. That is such a passionate appeal, isn't it, to the country? And you've touched really the heart of what a lot of people feel but are afraid to say.
Hi, good evening, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, look, it was how I feel, and it still is how I feel. That the position that we're in this country, and as it turns out, obviously the video has gone bananas, and it seems that a lot of people, like I'm talking, like I thought I would have been maybe speaking to thousands, but we're talking millions of people here that feel the exact same. We feel the exact same as I feel, that, you know, we're trapped in this nightmare and for no reason. And like I said in the video, what about us? I mean, we're 12 months now, next month, in this these in and out of lockdowns, and they're talking about going another 9 weeks over here, which will bring us up to nearly June. And, you know, that's 14 months, and it's absolute madness. And, you know, I get and I understand how, you know, they're talking about protecting the old people and protecting the vulnerable and protecting the hospitals and all. I get all that. But we've had 12, 14 months of that. So now, what about us? Do I not matter? I'm fit, I'm healthy. God forbid if I did catch the virus, I would be fine. I'd probably have to sit in the bed for a couple of days or whatever. Please God, it wouldn't affect me too much. But my kids, man, like whatever about the business and whatever about me, like our kids, my kids and everybody else's kids are going to be paying for this for years to come, because like I said, my young lad is all about, he's mad with me being an ex footballer, loves his football, loves going out on the bike, loves being out with his mates. My daughter, who's on the trampoline squad, does trampoline and gymnastics, and they're a shadow of their former self, and it's breaking my heart. So I'm trying to get the message out, or trying to find out at what stage do we matter. I mean, do we go another? Because I don't trust them, to be honest with you guys. I don't trust them saying, well, we got to go to May and then we'll open up. I do not trust them for 1 minute, because I know we'll get to May and they say, do you know what, we're not quite happy with the numbers, we got to go to September, and it'll just keep going on and on and on. And then from the business side of it, the help that we've got is nowhere near, and I don't want, please, people watching this, I don't want help, I don't want grants, I just want to be able to go to work. I just want to be able to go to, I want to open my gym safely like we did. I think we've had maybe 6-7 weeks between March last year and March this year where we've been open. We've been allowed open for a couple of weeks here and there, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was fine. We spent probably, I don't know how many thousands of euro we spent sort of making the gym safe with temperature monitors and sanitizing and all that sort of stuff, and social distancing and reducing numbers. So it just all got too much for me, and I let it out in that video. I had been running on the treadmill listening to some motivational videos, and when I got off it, I just I really let my feelings known, and the video's gone mental, and my Twitter, like, I'm surprised my phone hasn't melted.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, Gary, because you almost just close to 1 million views on that video, and I think public mood, sometimes we forget that governments can legislate for things and put things in law, but government should lead by consent of the people and the will of the people. And I when I listened to you, I thought to myself, do you know what? There's a lot of people who feel like you, Gary, but are afraid to say what you said. That is evidenced by the fact of the way that video you put out yesterday went absolutely viral. I mean, it just went everywhere. Everybody was retweeting it, from verified blue tickers to celebrities to politicians, because you spoke into the heart of how people feel, but have been afraid to say it. So I want to say thank you for being honest, because in a world of online abuse, you know what it's like for many of us who speak out, to be able to speak like that is so important, because you represent thousands, millions of people in the country who feel the same. We all know, as you've rightly said, Gary, we need to protect the elderly, the vulnerable, the frontline workers, the NHS. We love our NHS. We thank God for the work that they do. But the sacrifice that people have had to make and the measures governments have put in place, I wonder if they've, if actually it's worked against them, and it's actually had more of a devastating effect long term than what these, what they're trying to do. Kai, what do you think?
Well, firstly, Gary, let me say congratulations for having I'm going to be polite and say, the testicular fortitude to say what so many of us have been trying to say, and the effectivity of what you said. My concern is this: not only the economic devastation that it's causing to people, but for someone that spent their life involved in physical fitness, involved in professional football, now in the fitness industry, I have a huge concern about the long-term welfare of individuals, because our continued isolation contributes towards a weakened immune system, which is what they say this COVID really attacks. So in theory, if we follow what the governments are saying needs to happen, our better chance of preventative measures is not the face masks and the social distancing. We really need to start looking at having vaccines that work and building some form of herd immunity, some form of herd resistance, so that we can get society back open again, back on its feet. Now, I've advocated from the very get-go. The medical evidence shows that lockdowns don't work. They're not effective. All they do is they slow the curve of the infection. And one of the things that's really bothered me, I'm not quite sure what the situation in Ireland is, but here in Wales, the treatments of people that were cancelled to quote unquote protect the NHS. Today I tweeted out, it is my opinion, and I speak both as a news correspondent and a clergyman, it is my opinion that the people that made those decisions should now be arrested and tried for murder, because they have given so many people a death sentence that needed treatments, needed care, that was denied them to quote unquote protect the NHS, protect healthcare systems around the world. We've had cancer victims. I personally know somebody who's lost a family member because their chemotherapy treatment was stopped whilst dealing with brain cancer. This is not just about what's happening in industry. This is these continued measures, which are constantly revised and using WHO forecasts, not medical data, to make accurate interpretations of the picture, so that people are told what is actually happening. My concern is that this is destroying our entire way of life. And at some point, we, the people that are governed by consent, have to withdraw that consent and make a stand. We're seeing countries across the world that are standing up against lockdown, standing up against measures. Look at what's happening in Vienna. Look at what's happening in South Africa. Look at what's happening in Australia. And it's time that we, the people, actually start saying, we're not being governed in accordance with the consent that we've given. You cannot have 650 people making laws with no recourse in the United Kingdom to govern 62 million people, however many are governed in Ireland. We have got to stand up and do something now.
Yeah, and I think Gary, you've been like that because you're becoming a voice. I noticed on Twitter even today, posting up, because mainstream media haven't even spoken to you. They haven't picked up on your kind of passion and your frustration of the way things have been dealt with, have they?
No, they have no interest because it doesn't suit the narrative. They're controlled by the government. It's crazy. Like you're talking about treatments. I'll a quick story. my auntie, who was diagnosed just before the first lockdown in March with acute leukemia, was told, and we were shell shocked to get this news, and we were told when I spoke to the doctor that literally we were thinking about doing maybe alternative treatments for, instead of going through the chemotherapy and all that, and we were literally told that we had 2 days. If we didn't get her into the hospital in 2 days, she would not get the treatment that she needed. She needed a bone marrow transplant. And, you know, you're talking about, I'm not really sure what they're saying, is the cure worse than the disease? You know, I think the collateral damage from this is going to be catastrophic, because when you, like you say, when we open up and people go back out, their immune systems, they've been sitting in their houses, locked away, their immune systems are not going to handle it. And when I'm talking about the mainstream media here, like, there's no video that I've ever seen that goes viral that quick, and media don't pick up on it. Radio shows, talk shows, all that. Yeah. And if none of them, I've heard from none of them, and I won't hear from any of them either, because it doesn't suit the agenda that they're putting out to the public.
Yeah, one of the things you said there, Gary, I noticed that I've been looking at some of the research that's been done, the domestic abuse cases that have risen as a result of the pandemic. I mentioned earlier at the intro of the program tonight, and suicide rates amongst teenagers, thousands have been pushed into poverty, children with mental health. These are some of the impacts, sadly. And I know there's an argument, should we be blaming the government and those in power legislating for these things, or should we blame the virus? And I think blame has to be proportioned to 2 areas. Of course, the virus is responsible for a lot of these things. And one of the things that I've been concerned about, maybe some of our viewers on Facebook, you know, you can share comments, you can chat about this, but one of the things I'm bemused about, I'm going to bring a friend in, a few other guests in a few moments, but is when they were reporting deaths here in Wales, they were reporting them just lock, stock and barrel. So X amount of people have died. But then in the small print, it would say they died within testing positive of COVID within 28 days. So, and I've lost people from COVID as well. Loved ones, friends of mine have lost, you know, I've been to funerals. So I know it's real. So I'm not an anti-denier. I don't deny it's real. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, all that kind of stuff. I'm anti-mandatory, but that's another story. And I looked at all this and I thought to myself, when you look at the actual figures of people who have actually died from COVID, it seems as if they've been using a message to scare people, to justify these draconian legislations that they put into place to lock people down in society as a whole, which is a devastating effect, not just on the economy, but people's mental health and well-being. And I've asked the question, I mentioned this to Kai earlier today, actually, Kai, we talked, and I said, why is the government doing this? Is there an agenda at play here? What is the purpose behind it? Because surely there's got to be something, and I'm not into conspiracy theories. I need to just I know some of you might be, but I'm not a conspiracist. I'm not into all that kind of, who bombed 9/11 and all that, whatever. But just being honest, just getting the facts and the figures and realizing the government have really scared the nation, haven't they? And they've really made people fearful to the point then where they've kept them in lockdown for so long and they're, getting away with it. But yet the impact that this is having on people's lives is absolutely enormous, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, we have an unelected group over here called NEFIT, which is the chief medical officer who goes on TV every night live at 6 o'clock to announce the COVID deaths. Like, why does he need to do that now? We know there's a virus. We know people are dying. We don't need to know, like, that there was 600 cases today and 20 people died. They never done that with any other disease. They sent the cameras into the hospitals, into one of the COVID wards to go live on national TV. Again, why? Where was the camera when my auntie was going through leukemia, when she potentially could have died? Where's the cameras going into the cancer wards? Do you know, it's like everything is just being put aside. Every single death over here, as you're rightly saying, it's the same. If they test positive from COVID, if they go into the hospital with a heart attack and they test positive to COVID and unfortunately die, they're put down as a COVID death. Yep. That's madness. And the radios over here constantly, in between radio shows, there's adverts, there's ads. COVID is still here. We need you to stay away and mind yourself and stay in the house. All this. I mean, we don't need that. We know now. But, and I think that's why the videos resonated with so many people, because people have had enough. People are like, breaking point. You want to see my private mails on Twitter, guys. It's off the wall. It's off the wall. And like 75% of them are saying, I literally can't do this anymore. Yeah. And that is a scary thought.
In Wales, the Welsh government run radio adverts. And the message of the radio advert is, stay home, or you'll be responsible for killing someone.
For killing people, yeah.
That's literally what they're saying. I mean, if this is not, this is the kind of communist party propaganda of the old Soviet bloc and China and the likes of Cuba to scare the people into absolute submission. And at some point, we've got to look at this and think, at what point did we cross the line between general welfare of the country and just mass propaganda with the sole intention of subjugating peoples of every nation? Because you look at America, for example. You had Trump as president, no lockdowns, we're not having it, people need to work, people need to be out. Biden comes in straight away and within 17 hours is signing executive orders to start rolling back measures, making mandatory face masks mandatory, putting measures in place. What there is more than a virus at work here. I was telling Rich today, Anthony Fauci, the US medical advisor, is on the board of the NIH in the US. They have just announced that they will continue sponsoring the Wuhan laboratory that created this virus until 2024. Don't tell me there's not another agenda at play.
Yeah, sometimes you just follow the money trail, don't you? But what I would say is, and what's really annoyed me, especially being in the fitness industry and being sort of very, very conscious about being healthy and fit, is there is loads of scientific evidence that vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, literally the whole world should be taking that at the minute. I haven't heard one ad. I haven't heard one TD, one politician come on and say, listen, you know, here's the deaths for today, but you know what? We've got some good news. There's some science that shows that these things help. You know, there's never any good news. It's always, oh, we got to lock down. They've just announced today, wait to hear this here. They've just announced today potentially that we're going to have to stay in level 5 lockdowns until the waiting list for all the operations and things that they've put on the back burner because of COVID, until those waiting lists come down to an acceptable level.
That's absolutely crazy.
If they broke that measured in Wales, that's 10 years, because that's what they project.
Well, yeah. Well, I was hearing stuff like this week on the news talking about, you know, until we vaccinate the whole population and things. I think just ridiculous comments and thinking you can't do that to people. Listen, time's moving on. I want to bring my next guest on because she's a friend and she's a wonderful person. And she's fought for civil liberties. She's the director of Academy of Ideas. She's Baroness Claire Fox of Buckley, and she's a champion of free speech and civil liberties and so much more. And she's been in the House of Lords, right, saying the stuff that really matters, because she's like one of us, and I love her so much. And she's on the show tonight. She's joining me now. Claire, good evening. Welcome to Rich Politics. Hi, Claire. How are you? Oh, thank you for coming on, Claire. Really appreciate it. I know you've been watching the conversation tonight, and I just want to ask you, Claire, about the lockdowns, because I know you've contributed in the House of Lords. I've heard a lot of your speeches. I follow you on YouTube, your channel. I see what you do. You do daily updates for people. You're not like you're not a politician, really. You're just one of us in here. You just managed to get in there, you know, if you know what I mean. And what you're doing is you're speaking from the heart, and you're really making a lot of sense. And you know, you've been quite. You know, you don't hide what you feel or what you think about these lockdowns. What do you think, Claire?
Richie, we don't have Baroness Buckley in the broadcast.
Yeah, I can't hear her.
I can hear you, so go ahead, Claire. If I can hear you, it's fine. Oh, right. Okay. Let me just try this 1 second. Is that better? Yeah, you're live on my screen.
The joys of technology.
Can we see Claire? Can we see her? Forgive us, folks, for what if you're just watching online. We're just getting technical issues.
Nope, she's not in the broadcast, Rich.
No, they can't hear her on Facebook or YouTube either.
Right, well, I can see her. Claire, do you want to come out and come back in? Because I can see you fine. Come back in. Okay, cheers, Claire. So as Claire's just waiting to come back on, folks, you know, many of you, watching the show tonight, and you might feel the same way. Gary talked about the impact this has had on his children, for example. You know, one of the things that, as a father, certainly, you know, my children's whole social life has been absolutely dismantled, like many of you watching the broadcast tonight, and the impact that'll have on their mental health and education. I say almost crying, really. I'm emotional about it because it's our kids. You know, we can cope. I mean, you know, when grown up people, but when it's your children, you know, it has a bigger impact, doesn't it? I'm sure. Claire, are you there now?
I'm here.
Can everybody see and hear Claire?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank God for that,
So,
bloody hell.
I know. I thought you popped up for a fag, Claire. That's what it was.
Welcome back, my lady.
Yeah, welcome back, Baroness Fox of Buckley. Claire, I just want you to share with us a little bit about, because you've been a real advocate for civil liberties and freedom of speech as director of Academy of Ideas and in the House of Lords as well. You've been very vocal. I've been following your YouTube channel. What do you think about these lockdowns and, you know, the idea that there doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel, does there?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that, Gary, I was one of the people who watched your video and shared it before. You know, I like to think I was one of the early sharers, but anyway, of course, we all claim that. I'm actually from an Irish background, so it kind of really rang true. All my family are over there.
Oh, very good. Whereabouts are they over here?
Tipperary, largely, and Dublin.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, although this is partly what I was going to say. Largely, they've all accepted it, and they're not particularly yes people. And so this is why I actually disagree with it, not with you, Gary, but I actually disagreed with a few things that Kai said, because one of the things that seems clear to me is a lot of people in the UK accept it as well. They have done from the beginning. And one of the reasons why the government thinks that they're doing the right thing is because it's quite popular, right? Now, I think people are furious about, or terrified even, not even of the virus, but what it's doing to their families in a way that you expressed really well, Gary. But I can't say that that means that they are particularly anti-lockdown. And I myself also would like to point out that I think that there is no intention of subjugating people. I actually think what's happened is governments themselves are scared. This is an unknown virus. They didn't know what to do, and they've followed a particularly narrow logic as dictated by the public health profession that think what we've got to do is solve the problem with the virus above all else. And as a consequence of getting on that treadmill, forgive the fact that you're all fitness people, they've got stuck. They just can't get off it, right? And they actually, so I don't think it's intentional. I think they genuinely don't know how to get off it now, right? And in many ways, when you talk to people, they themselves get trapped. So the reason why this matters, Rich, is because when it comes to civil liberties, I want to say this can't be done without the consent of the people. And I think that's right. And we've seen in the UK, some terrible precedents for the introduction of laws without scrutiny, without, democratic oversight and so on. But there has not been a wide, cri de coeur from the people. It's just not happened. And one of the reasons why I think that's true is because I think one of the terrible situations that's emerged from isolation, you've talked about, the mental health problems and what it's done to kids and all the rest of it. But I think a lot of people have lost confidence socially. If you're on your own and you're kind of trying to figure it all out, you've got no one to talk to. I mean, usually we get together at work or, wherever it is, and we're all a bit one-sided and we're all a bit scaredy cat often. And then we talk to someone and they encourage us, and then we talk it through, and then we have different views. We don't just sit. Whereas what we're doing is we're all sitting watching these kind of people telling us this terrible story, and it discombobulates you in a way. And so I think people have lost their, it's not just their physical immunity, but in a way it's kind of, we've lost our immunity for democracy. We've forgotten that we are people who should be taking responsibility. And the only other thing I'd say, which is slightly counter to what was said before, is I think as well that people have wanted to go along with a lot of the lockdown strategy out of a sense of social solidarity. I don't think you can underestimate the fact that most people are good people. And they sort of thought that this was the best way to protect the elderly and the vulnerable. They don't want to be the kind of people who are just sort of selfishly going, I'm going to go to the gym and don't care. This does not mean I agree with them, because ultimately the reason why I shared your video, Gary, was because I do feel that in their heart of hearts, many of us think, what about, you know, who's forgotten, who's neglected, who's ignored, you know, don't we matter? Was that phrase, don't we matter, was the key phrase.
Yeah.
The swearing helped, but the don't we matter was what really got to people, because suddenly everybody thought, you know, I don't know how to express this better than that. Don't we matter? I mean, I care about the elderly, I care about the vulnerable, but don't we matter? We're suffering. And that was what was so magnificent about what you said. It gave that, it articulated what so many people feel. But I don't think that they're anti-lockdown necessarily.
No, I think, Claire, I think what, as you rightly point out there, that it was that phrase that you used, Gary. What about us? Yeah. It's like a song, isn't it? What about us? It was that part there, and I think because I'm one of those what about us, and some of our viewers will be those people. What about us? Because we're not in those categories. We're not vulnerable. We're not elderly. We don't have underlying conditions, and while we're sympathetic, we understand. You know, when the lockdown happened 335 days ago, yes, we all accepted it last year. We got it. We understood it. I think what has happened is because of the way the lockdowns have happened with this yo-yo open lock constantly, and then no scientific data to actually back up some of those claims, which we're going to come to. For example, shutting down parts of the economy when it was the leisure industry, when it was talking about gyms and places like that, when you're more likely, according to the scientific data, to transmit the disease in a supermarket than you are in a gym. And I know the gyms, supermarkets are essential because we have to buy food. Of course we do. But at the same time, the government were legislating for things that didn't seem to make sense to ordinary people like me and a lot of my friends. We're like, well, it doesn't make any sense, because if you go to a gym, you build up your immune system. Obesity is a massive killer. In fact, you're 25% more likely to die from COVID if you're obese. So the way the science was coming forward is as if to say, well, why are you shutting something that would be good for people's health and the benefits outweigh the disease? It didn't seem to make any sense. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the rest of our guests in, because we've got a lot of guests on the panel tonight.
Could I just say one other thing, Rich?
Yeah, of course.
Just quickly coming back. I absolutely agree with you. I think one of the most damaging things that's going to come out of this is that nobody's ever going to believe the science again on anything, because the difficulty is that I do think it's not driven. People are completely disagreeing in the chat and saying it's intentional, it's international, it's part of a big reset and all the rest of it. There's no doubt that there will be those who are opportunist enough to use it in that way. But what's happened is that those people who are geeks and scientists, who usually are very important in society, but they don't run society, have been given this platform and they've got carried away with themselves. And the politicians have lost confidence. And I absolutely agree with you. You can't any longer. I listen to the chief medical officers or and they're saying all these stats, and we've stopped believing them, because you start thinking that doesn't make any sense to me. And as a consequence of it not making sense, that's what encourages conspiratorial thinking, because people then start thinking there must be another agenda. I don't think there is. I don't think it's that planned. I think they are it's the weakness of our political elites that they're stuck with in the headlights, don't know what to do, and they've abdicated responsibility to the forecasters and the scientists, and it's completely backfiring on them.
Yeah, I think just to add to that though, Claire, one of the problems that we've had, just speaking of the United Kingdom, is because there hasn't been a one nation approach. That for us here in Wales, for example, we have seen how the Welsh Assembly, the Welsh Labour-led Assembly, has legislated in this pandemic just to be politically opposite to what's coming out of Westminster. Now we see, for us in Wales, now it's become blatantly obvious. The fact that the First Minister comes out ahead of the Prime Minister, with no idea of what he's going to say come Monday of the roadmap forward. Now he comes out and saying there's no change, we're not doing this. Yet last week they're passing legislation to ensure they can delay an election. Now it looks to people as, okay, so now the lockdown measures in Wales, they're now political, because now we're going to keep you in lockdown long enough to be able to say we need to delay an election 6 months in the vain hope that we can recover and maintain power. So I think that's where a lot of if we'd have had a one nation approach in the United Kingdom, things wouldn't have been quite as bad they are in the devolved, the devolved countries of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. People wouldn't be feeling the way they are. And because of this devolved approach, the support systems that have been put in place have not been comparative. People in England, in Wales, it took 16 weeks for the first people to start getting COVID finances to help them. It took England a matter of days. So it's all of these things that are building to people looking at it going, okay, so there is more than what we're seeing. And in Wales, Rich and I were talking about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in Wales, it emerged that their model for the scientific data is a WHO forecast, which has been proven to be completely inaccurate, yet they're still using that forecast. So it's not actual medical data that's the principal source. And I think this is what's really getting to people now. Like you said, the data and the scientific evidence is not matching up. You and I both know Dr. David Bull. I've talked to Dr. Dave several times, and he keeps telling me the data doesn't match what the politicians are saying. The data doesn't match what the media is saying. We need to go back. Look at Sweden. Sweden went by the data from day one, and look at the effectivity they've managed the pandemic.
Kai, on the Sweden thing, I was reading an article in the Citizen this week, and it was a very interesting article actually. And what was quoted in there really kind of spoke to me from Nick Hudson of the Citizen. And I just want to show our viewers this, and we're going to bring our other guests in a few moments. Don't forget to share the broadcast, folks. But just this year, I don't know if you can actually see that, but the actual statement in there that really got me was the latter part of that particular statement, when he talked about politicians being power drunk, and let me just get it up here. You can see it there. History will thus record lockdowns as the product of pseudoscientific ideology, manifestations of an unprecedented mass hysteria and drummed up fear, reminders that we must always defend vital freedoms against panicking and power-drunk politicians. When I read that, there's a lot more in the article, and he was talking about the lockdowns in Sweden, the success that they've seen there, because they haven't had any. And then James Melville, someone I follow on social media, many other people posting videos of Italy and many other European countries that have vaccinated less than we have, because we have vaccinated, per population. And in fact, the stats are here. You can see that United Kingdom is head of the stats on when it comes to the vaccinations. But places like Italy, where 3.39 million people have been vaccinated, yet they're back to some kind of normality where things are open, people are walking around. And I can tell our viewers this, and I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to do it. I was in touch with a woman today, a student from Wuhan in China, not one of those fake accounts, a real genuine person. And she told me, she asked me how things were in the UK, and I told her, and she said, in Wuhan, everything is open, back to normal. The only thing is they have to wear masks out in public, and that was it. And it got me thinking, well, why is the UK being banged up? We've got this huge vaccination program being run out, and I understand we need to get the right people vaccinated first. I get that, and I think teachers should be vaccinated as well, but that's another thing, get the kids back to school. But I think to myself, why are we still in such a lockdown when these other European countries and other parts of the world are not? And yet, we have the highest level of vaccination rollout. Gary, what do you think about that?
John, just about to jump in on that. Do you know why? Because they've met resistance. Over here, the government haven't met any resistance yet, and they're going to meet it, and they're going to meet it very quickly, the way they're going, because the extension of the 9 weeks was leaked. It wasn't even a public address. He wasn't addressing the nation and saying, look, we might need it. And it was leaked on Thursday night, I think, to the Daily Mirror paper in the UK. And there's an element of me thinking, did he leak that to see the public reaction over the weekend, to see if they could get away with it? And I think in the UK there hasn't been much resistance. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but Italy, if from the research that I've done, they opened up maybe 3-4 weeks ago, all the restaurants, all the bars. They just said, right, everybody open. They can't close us all. They can't arrest us all. And the government's had to back down a little bit. I don't know if that's the answer here or in the UK, but they're going to meet resistance very, very quickly, because when people, and I agree with Claire, I think they're so far down the rabbit hole now, they don't know their arse from their elbow, being honest. And that's the problem, because if you, over here, last March, April, May, they were like, okay, the first wave, yada, yada, yada. There's going to be another two or three waves of this before we get out of it. So that was their opportunity, right? We need to protect the hospitals. We need to protect the old people. Go and make sure that the hospitals were able, go and get more ICU beds. Go and make sure you have enough beds in the hospital to deal with this, that you don't have to lock the whole bloody country up. But they didn't do it. The second wave came, right, lockdown, boom, everybody, level 5. Third wave came, boom, lockdown, level 5. And the hospitals were under pressure, but they were never overwhelmed.
Yep.
I've got loads of nurses that train in my gym, and they're the salt of the earth. They're fantastic, and I love them, and they're brilliant. But like, you know, everybody that's their job. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're busy, sometimes you're not. You know what I mean? I don't think we were ever at the state. I don't know about the UK, but I don't think we were ever at the point in Ireland where they were overwhelmed, where they literally couldn't keep up. That falls on the government, because they said last April, May, there's going to be another wave of this, and we need to be prepared. And they've done nothing. They've done absolutely nothing. And I think the resistance is coming.
The other thing that you mentioned, Rich, which is so important, is and also why, Gary, your video matters, is that there's been a clampdown on free speech. Yeah. You know, the fact that if you raise objections, as you can tell, I'm not one of the big core anti-lockdowners. I've raised arguments, but you'll get called a COVID denier anyway, right? You'll get told that you're an anti-vaxxer if you want to raise the issue whether it should be mandatory or not. You can't actually have a public conversation. And I think, therefore, people are frightened to speak out, which is why when somebody does, it's great when there's a positive response. But that has been the government and the mainstream media's responsibility. They have basically said, don't ask awkward questions, or we're going to label you, delegitimize you, say you're selfish and you want to kill grannies. And I think that's changing, because people are now saying, I do want to ask questions. Come on. I need to know what's really going on.
And that's why you see loads of trouble in supermarkets when people are saying, well, you know, I'm fit and healthy, I don't need to wear a mask, and they're getting arrested. You see people, I don't know what it's like over there. I'm sure I've seen videos where they drive outside their 5K distance to get to a beach to go for a walk on a nice day. They're getting arrested, they're getting fined. It's absolutely, it's bonkers.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, the thing is, you can drive to McDonald's, which can be 5 miles away, to get a burger, but you can't drive to, you know, Penavon Pond in Wales up here and go for a walk. I mean,
on the way home, Rich, you can stop off in an off license and buy a 24 cans of lager.
Yeah, but in Wales, you can't buy a bra if you're a woman, because it's classed as non-essential. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. Now, I want to move the conversation on, because we've got our guest to get on as well. And we're going to talk about the impact it's had on the hospitality and leisure industry. Obviously, we've got a pub landlord on, my friend Matt Solcombe, and from Friends, campaigner for No Campaign, No Gain, which is a campaign to get gyms made essential in Wales. It's certainly in Wales, because they are essential. The impact and the benefits, Gary, which you will know as gym owner. I have to admit to you, folks, this is just to let you know, I don't use the gym. Okay, it's just I let you know that I'm not a gym user, so it's not a big thing for me, but I get it, I understand it. And joining me now and joining us is Lee Catherine. Lee Catherine, good evening. How are you? I'm okay, thank you. Sorry to keep you waiting in the green room remotely. But thank you so much. And I know you've been very vocal, Neil, with the Welsh Government and campaigning to the MSs, your members of the Senate, for those of you who don't know, about opening gyms, because we were promised, weren't we, by Elenda Morgan, one of the cabinet ministers, that the gyms would be open as a priority to the government. And this Friday, Sunday today, Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, actually didn't follow through with what they promised, did he?
Rich, we can't hear her.
Can't see her.
We can't see her or hear her again.
Okay, you can't see her. You're
this is what happens when you leave Welsh.
We are live, Andy, Catherine. We can't see her. You have people on YouTube telling me, people on Facebook telling me, everyone's shouting at me. Stop shouting at me. I'll block you otherwise. Lee Catherine, can you come back in? Do you want to come off and come back in, love? Because we can't see or hear you apparently. Is that okay? Just log out and click the link and come back. I can see you, but nobody else can. All right, cheers, darling. Thank you. Right. Okay, so we're going to move the conversation on. We're going to talk about the pubs then. How many of you think the pubs should be open? Hands up.
Oh, undoubtedly. And I agree with them being open, and I don't even drink.
And joining us now is my friend Matt Slocum. He is a pub landlord of a pub in Hereford, the Crown Inn, I believe it is. Matt, how are you? We can't hear you. Put your mic on. Are you there? More technical issues.
Oh,
you're finally there. Yeah, we can see you, but we can't hear you, Matt. We can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
The joys
That's
of
a shame.
technology.
I know, and he's in a pub as well. Look, he lives in a pub. Like he's so and so. I mean, okay, Matt, you can hear me, can you? I know. All right, okay. You're gonna have to come back in and back out, Matt. Sorry about that to our viewers. It's a nightmare tonight. I've never done this before. You know what? Never work with children and animals, but never work on restream as well because it's a bloody nightmare. Anyway, we're gonna go back to Catherine. Let me see if I can get Lee Catherine back. Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
You are. Can everybody see her and hear her? Yes.
Yep.
Yes, finally we got you, Lee Catherine. Thank you for coming on.
Finally.
I know you've been very, very, very vocal and passionate about reopening gyms, and because you feel that it needs to happen. We've heard from the Welsh Government that would be a priority, and they've reneged on that promise of opening up the gyms as a priority, haven't they? What's your thoughts?
I'm disgusted. I'm utterly disgusted. I've got to agree with Gary, with Claire, and with Kai. Kai, preventative measures, absolutely. We're taught from a young age, prevention is better than cure. You know, we need to be fit and healthy. Yeah. What Gary said, we matter too. And also about the resistance, Gary said, there will be resistance soon. But why it's not happening is that people, they've just got apathy, I think, at the moment. And what Claire said, I totally agree. They don't know what else to do. They're down a rabbit hole. If they actually put their thinking caps on, and stop being so lazy and going, oh, we'll just lock down and pay everyone money, right? Which is an easy thing to do. Well, we'd be in a better situation. And also what Kai said earlier, or Claire, about the fear, and Gary, from the media, the thing is, when you've got fear, control comes with it. Fear and control, that's what it is. I'm utterly disgusted at the Welsh Government. There's no evidence. There's such low transmissions in gyms. And as Kai, I believe, earlier said, you know, when you exercise, your immunity is boosted. Rich, you mentioned obesity. 25% of people who die with COVID, they say, because we now know that if you die of something else, but you've been tested positive for COVID in 60 days in the UK, you'll get put down as COVID. You know, you're more or less a goner if it's COVID and it's obesity. I was told last year by a friend's husband who works in the medical industry, there were children turning up in UHW, which is the main hospital in Cardiff, diabetes, because they're off school, they're eating. Even my neighbour showed me a photo of her 8-year-old when she was in school and 3 months into lockdown. She had to get her, you know, moving more and on a diet. She was 8 and I could see the difference. And that's because the kids are inactive. And as Claire said, there are the vulnerable and we do care about them, you know, the elderly and the vulnerable. But as Claire said, people are becoming less socially confident. They're going to become vulnerable then because they're not going to be as assertive, and they'll be able to be manipulated in relationships or jobs or anything like that. The gym is going to boost your confidence, make you feel better, combat obesity, you know, boost the immunity, and so good for mental health with those feel-good endorphins. And it's, you know, a great way to meet people as well. And, you know, oh, we don't want the NHS overwhelmed. I am sick of hearing it. Nobody wants the NHS overwhelmed. You know that. But we're overwhelmed. We are overwhelmed. Mental health is overwhelmed. Domestic violence is overwhelmed. Children, the kids' parents are overwhelmed with trying to homeschool them. I'm sick of the virtue signalling. If you go to a hospital, you will see sick people. Well, there will be more sick people by keeping the gyms closed. It's nonsensical. Nonsensical. Makes no sense. And the government are ignoring all the data. And they're ignoring emails. This is what's riling me up, because I was a campaigner for Lucy's Law, and we were relentless and we were successful, and relentless pressure works. I've grown up with politicians. My mother was a councillor, she was Lord Mayor, my cousin's still a politician, friend, MP, government minister, peers, you know, and pressure works. Claire will back me up on this. You need to keep the foot on the gas, but to ignore people who have a vote and the public and just not get back to them, I think is utterly shameful. But I know a Luned Morgan, And for her to stand on that podium 3 weeks ago and say we're going to open the gyms, and then come Friday, Mark Drakeford says we're not doing it. Well, rather than actually make it look like a barefaced lie, because touching on what Claire said, people are now losing trust in the science, but they're now losing trust in politicians. And when trust is gone, it's very difficult to get back. Mark Drakeford should have said, you know what, for once, we're going to stick to our word. Most politicians do. You'll always get the minority that lie and manipulate, but most, in the main, go into politics to make a difference. He should have said, we are going to do something. We'll have licensing officers from regulatory services of local authorities check out the gyms, because if they can mark restaurants on hygiene levels, they can do it in the gyms with ventilation and hygiene. Or we're going to get government enforcement officers to go into the gyms, and we will do spot checks. They've got the ability to do it. This is government. Like Claire knows, I've been in Number 10. I've been in the Palace of Westminster, in the Lords and Parliament side. I've been in the Senedd. They've got plenty of resources at their fingertips. If they want to do something, they will do something. Lockdowns don't work. When people are more stressed, there's more cortisol in the body. That's not good for your immunity either. So they're not protecting us. They're not keeping us healthy and safe. Goes back to what Claire said. It's just desperation down the rabbit hole. Oh, what else do we do?
Yeah.
Well, you get people back in the gyms. You give them vitamin D3. You give them zinc, because a study has come out now about vitamin D3, reducing the COVID mortality rate by 60% in Spain. And you get public health initiatives working, educating people, and you get the economy going again. So people are happier. When you're happier, you're healthier. It's that simple. It really is. We're not asking them to split the atom.
Yeah, Lee Catherine, we can see your passion's very, very clear, and it's fantastic to see, because we need voices like yours to be able to say that, and I think it's important. And I'm going to bring my final guest on in a few moments, because we've talked a little bit about, the political side. We've talked a little bit about the physical side when it comes to fitness, the gym, immune systems being built, and all that kind of stuff. But obviously there's the social impact, because the question I wanted to start the conversation with tonight for our viewers, I didn't get to ask was, and it was this, and it's to all of you before I bring Matt on. Whilst protecting the NHS, are we literally destroying people's lives socially, mentally, and financially? And has it been worth it? I know it's a difficult question to answer, and it's almost like it sounds loaded, but it's not. It's a real question. So for the sake of all the rules and legislations that have been placed by governments, has it been worth it for protecting the NHS and saving lives? We know that saving lives is the priority. I mean, for goodness sake, my mum is classed as vulnerable because she's got, scarring on her lungs, COPD. She lives in Llanelli. I haven't seen her for over a year. I can't go and see her. I'm not allowed to. So I understand what it's like to live with people you need to protect. I get that. But the question, whilst protecting the NHS, have we destroyed people's lives socially, mentally, and financially, and has it been worth it? I'm going to ask you all to give your thoughts on that. First, Gary, you first.
100%. They've destroyed. What I said earlier on, the downfall or the collateral damage to this down the road is going to be a lot worse than, like, we've lost. Unfortunately, we've had 4,000 deaths here in Ireland from with COVID or of COVID, whatever. So we're going to lose so much more. But not only that, you look at it here, you're talking about the financial side and the business side of it. It's not free money. They're not going to have free grants or free furlough payments or free COVID payments. You're going to pay for it down the road in taxes. Like, there's so much. And look, like I said at the start of the program, yes, protect who we need to protect, but at what cost? And the cost at that minute is far outweighing protecting who we need to protect. The vaccination, if they get the vaccines done, get the front care, the health workers and all the old people done and dusted. And, if it needs to be a slow and gradual reopening, then that's fine. I can handle that. But not this, no, we can't do it till everybody's done, or we can't, it's just absolute nonsense. So to answer your question, they've destroyed. It's going to be worse. I think it's going to be worse down the road, a lot worse.
Thank you, Guy. Claire, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, just because I have to leave, it's been a great discussion. But I think deciding whether it's been worth it up until now is almost like a waste of our energy. There'll be a massive inquiry internationally and we'll find out what we think. But the point that I think that you said, Gary, again, I agree with you, which is, you know, we've actually got this mass vaccination it's the one thing the government's done really well. And so people actually accepted the last lockdown, or this present one we're still in, very much with the idea, well, look, let's discuss the past in the future, but let's get this done now. New variants, have the vaccines, we'll be out. And then suddenly they say, well, maybe it won't be the over 70s, it'll be the over 60s, or maybe it'll be the over 50s. Now it's everyone. Then it started to be international today, where they started saying, well, we won't be until it's, you just think, for God's sake. And it's the demoralization of that. So I think when you say, Rich, you know, is it worth it? I think at the moment, what I'd say is, if they don't, you know, if you believed their roadmap, as it were, you know, if they said, right, we're going to do this, and then we'll now rebuild. What I'm most worried about is that we're going to need a huge amount of energy to rebuild society, rebuild the economy, kickstart, you know, make kids confident again, you know, say to them, look, you're not going to get mentally ill. We're going to get out there. We're going to change the world. We're going to all this sort of stuff. But if we're completely demoralized ourselves, tired, and we've lost energy, that's what really frightens me. And if that happens, then it won't have been worth it. But I've got a lot of faith in humanity. And I do think that what's very important is that we carry on having these conversations. All power to rich politics for this, you know, because you need to have as many people trying to make sense of it, talking about it, not shutting up, and at least not being frightened to say what we think, because that's the only way we can kind of keep our spirits going, because it's a broken spirit. If that goes, then we're really in trouble. And that's what I'm most worried about, but which I'm determined is not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, Claire, thank you for coming on. I know you've got to go, but to all of our viewers as well, you know, please follow Claire's on YouTube as well. She gives daily updates of her work in House of Lords. Whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't really matter. She's there, right? So suck it up and just follow her. Claire, thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate
everyone. Sorry to leave.
No, everyone say goodbye to Claire. Thanks for coming on, Claire. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.
So coming back to that question, I just cut it off too quickly then. So Lee Catherine, come back to the question. Do you, because my opinion is I don't think it has been worth it. That's my opinion for what it's worth. I mean, do you think it's been worth the sacrifice of that phrase, you know, protect the NHS, save lives? You know, that was the big kind of slogan, wasn't it, across the nation? Yeah. But then the impact that Gary highlighted, those impacts in that Twitter video that he did when he talked about the impact on his own family, which is the same for millions of us who are not in that vulnerable category. Has it been worth it?
Well, I think no, but you know who we need to ask? We need to ask the bereaved family of somebody that's committed suicide because they've lost their business through lockdown, if it's worth it. Yeah. We need to ask somebody who's had their cancer treatment cancelled and it's now terminal, if it's worth it, because I know what their answer will be. And that's my answer. No, it's not worth it. And there's a comment here from Marie about the NHS being supposed to save us. She's right, because the backlog of undiagnosed and untreated illnesses, that's when the NHS is going to overwhelm. So everybody, that wants lockdown, own it. Own it. When you see the queue for the food banks in minus 20 degrees in Scotland, own it. Own it, because you've asked for this, you've supported it. And the more people comply, the more they will do it. There has to be another way, and there is another way. But the government, as Claire said earlier, they're too terrified. Steve has just commented, absolutely, Steve, I concur. It's the easy option. They just don't want to have to think. And do you know what somebody said to me when the gyms were open in the changing room about Mark Drakeford? Oh, well, I do sympathise with him. It must be very difficult, the decisions. And I said, you know what? If you don't want to make difficult decisions, don't go into politics. My mother said this when she was a politician. Somebody was whining to her in the council about making a decision. And she just said, grow a set man up, make the decision. If you don't want to do difficult decisions, don't go into politics. And that's it. You are supposed to lead and protect the country and run it. At this point, I wouldn't let him lead my dog or run a bath. Stop whining about it.
Well, I think we know what you think, Lee Catherine, and a lot of people probably feel the same. No, I'm gonna ask Kai, because me and Kai are gonna stay on after you guys have gone. I'm going to bring because he's been waiting and he's my favourite guest, apart from the internet sensation that is Gary Dempsey. First of all, I had a former professional football player on, Gary, so it's great to have you on. But Matt Slocum is a pub landlord, and of course, the impact that's had on the hospitality industry, it's not just the beer drinking. It's what people think is, when you start campaigning, say, open up the pubs, they think we're all alcoholics, right? Because the online abuse I've had. So when I've been saying, open up the hospitality industry, like, you just open up a pub. Yeah, I will open up freaking pubs up, not because I want a beer. I want to watch rugby with my mates. You know what I mean? I want to watch Wales beat Ireland, Gary. But never mind. Bring in Matt Slocum. Matt, good evening. Welcome to Rich Politics. Well, your volume's not on again. We did this before. Your volume's not working.
I think everything is on his side.
Can you do land signals or something? Just get a pint of beer. That's it. No. Matt, we're going to have to drop you again. Drop you like a cheap tent. I'll have to have you on another show. There we are. Matt's gone. Well, we're going to talk about... I know. Well, we're going to try and get him back on in a few moments. Let's talk about the hospitality industry, because something that Gary said in his tweet that went viral, as we've all talked about, is that impact it has on people socially. Like your daughter, Gary, was going to gymnastics. Your son, going out with his mates, playing football. I have the same with my kids. We've robbed people of their social life, Gary, haven't we?
Yeah, of course we have. I mean, that's like, that's life. That's what living is. That's what we do. The kids go to school, they go to football, they go to gymnastics, they play with their friends. Like that's living your life. What we're doing at the minute is existing. We're not living. We're just here. We're just existing. And that's what for the kids, whatever about us. I mean, we're sort of, some of us are mentally able to do it and others are not. But I mean, the children, man, like look, like I said, that's what life is all about. Life is all about, like you say, meeting up with your mates, going down the pub. It's not to go down to the pub and get sloshed and fall around the place and grab a chipper on the way home. Like that.
Hey, Gary's nothing wrong with that, mate. Hey, nothing wrong with going down the pub and getting slaughtered and having a kebab on the way home. Come on now.
No, them days are gone. Them days are long gone. But you know what I mean? You're dead right in what you're saying. You go down the pub, you have your 3 or 4 pints, you have the crack with the lads. That's life. That's living. And we're not living at the minute. We're just existing, and please God,
I've got a theory why they've done it. I'm quite the conspiracy theorist for a clergyman and a broadcaster. I've got a theory why.
Well, we'll allow anybody on Rich Politics. Can you know that?
They've shut the gym so we're not strong and healthy. They've closed the pub so we can't organise the rebellion. That's
good point.
But like when you look at it, what the guys were saying earlier on, but you can go, like you said earlier on, Rich, you can go and get a Big Mac and on the way home, pick up a bottle of vodka on the way home.
I
got loads of comments coming on Facebook. I can't get them on the screen for today. I've had technical issues here, right? But lots of people, some of my mates as well, say, the pubs ain't about the beer. It's about the social aspect in there. And I think that's the 100%. Same with whether it's the gym, the pub. Because let's be honest, you don't socialise in the supermarket. Most people end up in your way.
Oh, we do
in
now.
an aisle. Yeah, we do now.
We do
I've noticed that. I've noticed my local Aldi's
most
for those
drinks aisles.
Yeah, when I get paid, I go to Waitrose. When I don't, I'm in Aldi's. But when I go to the superstore now, I go there for a day out almost. Like it's like I got to go there for like 25-30 minutes. All I need is ham and cheese, but I'm going there and I end up filling a trolley because I don't need it. I'm spending more money because I just want to spend more time out of the house. I mean, that's the case for a lot of people. We're missing that social interaction.
You're saying that, Rich. I've got to jump in. I got my wife. She's been saying for years about getting her teeth whitened. So I got her some teeth whitening stuff for Christmas, and she had to go into Dublin. We're in Wicklow, so we're like, I don't know what it is, about 20 miles, 25 miles south of Dublin. But where I got her the teeth whitening stuff, she had to go into the dentist in Grafton Street, which is right in the middle of Dublin city centre. Yeah. And I swear, she says she felt like Mary Poppins. She said she'd been let out of the asylum for the day. She went in early. Her appointment wasn't until 12 o'clock. She went in at 11, got a coffee, had a little walk around Dublin city centre. Nobody around, absolutely nobody around, like a ghost town. But she just felt like Jesus. She went in, got her treatment, and came out, got another coffee, and then another wee walk around because, like, she didn't want to come home and sit in the bloody sofa on the couch all day again. Do you know what I mean? It's just madness.
I got to get this. Gary, you're talking about Matt. I don't know what they did in Ireland, but here in Wales, back in December, they banned the sale of alcohol, but pubs could open. Did you know that? I know they didn't do it in Ireland. I mean, they go mad in Ireland. No, you can open the pub. Yeah, you can open the pub, but you can't sell alcohol. It's like a butcher opening, not selling meat. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Till 6.
And-
Till
and-
Did
6.
they have? Did they have if you were in the pub, you had to have a substantial meal?
No.
Yeah,
No,
No, we didn't.
we
We
had
had, no, we didn't have that
Yeah.
year. Did we have that year? No, we had that year. I mean,
no, they started that, and then when they
Right.
introduced the fire break, they banned the sale of alcohol in pubs.
well, we're talking about
Yeah.
pubs, right? I'm going to try and bring Matt in now again, right? 1 second, guys. Matt, are you there?
He's back.
Are you there? You still got no
can't hear
sound.
him.
You still can't hear him. He's effing and jeffing there, sure. I'm sure he is. But he's Matt. Honestly, you must.
You know,
must
the,
use-
the ridiculous thing about it was we're trying to get Matt on.
No.
So I broadcast, I do the news from my home, and I go to a studio. The studio is 320 miles from where I live. I can make that trip. That's perfectly allowed. That's the broadcasting side of what I do. As a clergyman, I'm on the list of essential workers. I take food to my vulnerable mother and my
Right.
vulnerable brother 12 miles
No
away.
wine.
I cannot stop at the beach that's halfway between where I live and where my mother lives. It's a
Crazy.
criminal offense to stop there. But I can drive
But-
320 miles to a studio to broadcast.
It's nuts, isn't it? Talking about that, this is my bar, boy, boys and ladies. This is the studio. The studio is my bar. I mean, this is it, And you are right. I'm going to try and bring Matt in again. So just bear with us, folks. Just bring him in so we can get him in. Matt, are you there? Mate, listen, you are being dropped from the show because you can't come on. Oh, get behind that bar and pull us a pint. I'll be over now in an hour. Don't tell the Welsh government. Ta-da.
In Ireland.
We all saw what the inside of a pub looks like. We'd all forgotten.
Yeah, I know. I know.
At least we saw that.
I mean, we're trying to see the light side of it, and obviously for loads of people watching on social media, on Facebook as well, they're all feeling the same. I'm watching the comments here, and it's pretty much the same. Look, we're not happy. We want our lives to go back to normal, don't we? And I think what struck it for me was when the health minister, health secretary Matt Hancock, came on, and I think it was December the 8th, and he promised us, the vaccination is going to come out, and after the vaccinations rolled out, this is the roadmap out. I'm gonna play this clip, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to a few more minutes to talk about it. But let's just watch this clip together. This is the moment Matt Hancock talked about the vaccinations and the rollout and the exit out of lockdowns. Let's have a look if I can get it on here. 1 second.
Matt Hancock, and you have every reason to smile. I mean, Margaret Keenan is a pioneer, isn't she?
It's just wonderful, isn't it? Watching the images of Margaret, and then I've seen a few others. William Shakespeare, the second person, and it looks like such a small thing, just having that jab in the arm, but it means so much.
All right, the video stopped there, but he went on to say, look, this is the way out. Now, this is my thing, right? We were told that vaccinations were the way out, but since December, we vaccinated close to the latest figures from the government, 18 million people. That's the most vulnerable and the elderly. But yet, they're still talking about, these lockdowns not being released, if you like. The restrictions are still not being lifted. That's the part for me as a member of the public. I hear this and think, great, we got a vaccination. You're going to lift restrictions. Come on, and when's it going to happen? And behold, nothing. What's your thoughts, guys?
Awful. Again, it's going to come down to trust, isn't it? As Claire touched on earlier, people were sort of given some hope, and it was taken away because, the NHS, especially NHS England, have done wonderful work with the vaccination and the speed that they've distributed them and got them into people's systems, and here in Wales, a little bit slower. I'm sorry, I don't know about the other devolved nations, but really, if people are being vaccinated, then, everybody would assume they are going to be opening things up again. Mark on Facebook, Matt Hancock was found guilty in court on Friday for unlawfully handing out PPE contracts. I find it all very worrying. But, the vaccinations, why are they not opening them up again? But again, if you can't vaccinate everybody, and that's the thing, well, we want everyone vaccinated, it's all herd immunity, Why are you not giving out vitamin D3 and echinacea or zinc or things in the meantime? You know, that they're fairly cheap, aren't they?
The problem you got as well,
it worries me, Rich, because if they behave like this in a private business, they'd all be sacked. If we had private businesses or we had bosses or KPIs and targets to meet, we'd all be sacked, wouldn't we? I mean, it's a shambles.
Yeah.
It's a shambles. And they should all go, all of them. Not just Westminster, Wales, all of them. Because there's no leadership. It's a mess.
I think in Wales, one of the biggest concerns now is, and something I've touched on earlier on, is that the programs that are being rolled out, the things that we told were going to be the roadmap out, it's now very, very clear that they're not going to be used. They're not going to be brought forward the way that we were told they're going to be brought forward, simply because the Welsh government, now I'm only speaking about Wales, but they are doing everything they can to ensure that come May the 6th, that Wales doesn't go to the polls, because this is now about the politics of preventing an election that Labour know full well they're going to get absolutely stuffed at if we go to the polls in May. All of the predictions show, or the polling shows, that we're either going to have a hung parliament, or we're going to Labour face the possibility of failing to form a coalition government themselves, and most likely the Tories and one or two of the smaller parties coming up with a coalition government that leads the way. My biggest concern is this, and something that we should keep hammering on. We have seen in recent weeks failure after failure after failure of government ministers, cabinet ministers breaching their COVID restrictions, breaching the lockdown rules themselves, not paying the price for it. It started way back last year when the current health minister broke the laws, then went into work the day after and changed the laws to cover his behind. And I think what is really at the forefront of where I'm at, and the things that I say, because I hammer on about this both in the UK and the US, because I do news 5 days of the week, is my concern is what started off as a genuine care for the country. Why shut down the Nightingale hospitals? Why shut down the Dragon hospitals? We spend hundreds of millions of pounds preparing for the first wave, the second wave, making sure we were ready. In the summer, they shut it down. Now, when we need them, according to them, they don't exist, and we've locked the country down. Just statistically alone, over the Christmas period, the NHS was at 85% occupancy. The same period, 12 months before, pre-pandemic, the same NHS was at 92% occupancy. We have cancelled treatments left, right, and centre. We have given people, politicians have given people a death sentence. Cancer treatments have been cancelled. Essential surgeries have been postponed. I know a lady that's lost a foot because of a surgery that couldn't be performed because it had to be cancelled. I know a friend of mine, his wife has lost her brother because chemotherapy was cancelled for a stage 4 brain tumor. I know other cancer patients. Wales Online this week reported on that 31-year-old mother that's left behind a 6-year-old daughter because the NHS. At what point did protecting the NHS become a legally acceptable political way of committing what to me is genocide against the people of our nation?
I agree with you. Totally agree with you.
I don't know what the situation is in Ireland. I can imagine it's pretty similar, that the hospitals have been shut down left, right, and centre. And
we had we done the same as you guys. We obviously have the private hospitals and the public hospitals. We give, I'm not sure, it was at the end of lockdown 1, we gave the private hospitals billions.
Yeah.
Right, we need them. We need them for the beds. Do you know how many beds were used?
Yeah.
Zilch.
Zero.
Paid these private hospitals millions and millions of euros, and they never used any of them. It's an absolute outrage. But just as while I have you, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, but there's a roadmap being leaked for the UK. So March 8th, schools, kids, outdoor sport, golf and tennis.
Yep.
Early April, non-essential retail, outdoor pubs and restaurants. What's an outdoor pub? Jesus.
So that's pubs that have beer gardens. You'll be able to open a beer garden.
Mid-April, gyms.
Yep.
May, cinemas and theatres and indoor pubs and restaurants. And August, potentially, you might get a foreign holiday.
Now, bear this in mind. That's the national plan, but that only applies to England, because Friday, the Welsh First Minister has told us that although we've got early stage children going back to school next week, that none of the retail and things will be open till at least after Easter, which is the middle of April, and had the audacity in his press conference to turn around and say that Wales should be prepared for the fact that we will not return to normality this year. Those are the first ministers. He's already I couldn't get my head around is he was already talking about third and fourth waves.
Our Godfrey that we have leading our country said in January, he was talking about Christmas, about not having Christmas in January. On TV saying that Christmas, we don't know what Christmas is going to be like this year. And we were like,
they just don't know, Gary. And you know, it's like, as Claire said earlier, the trust, people's heads are going to be shot. And I do believe we are going to be at a tipping point soon where there is going to be civil unrest. People won't take it. I mean, I know there is a lot of apathy in the country and probably in the Republic as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, there is a tipping point. There's a breaking point with most people. And the fact that if people did their research, what Kai said about the capacity within the NHS, if they went on the ONS website and the NHS websites, they'll see the bed capacities and the death figures. And it's nowhere near what people are being led to believe in the media. I've got clients who are medical, you know, one paramedic, London Ambulance Service. You can't get more frontline than that. And he said they were battered at Christmas, as any Christmas. But they've gone back to normal. He said, I
have to say sorry, folks, for me dropping out. My internet broadband went completely off. So thank you for carrying the show. I really appreciate it. Now, you mentioned the hospitals here in Wales. You know, we spend Gary, you know if you know, it's £166 million on what they call field hospitals, Nightingale hospitals, Dragonheart hospitals in Wales. And they were barely used. And then they were dismantled. Now, that's taxpayers' money. That's our money, right? That they spend 166, as you were saying, Lee Catherine, about the waste, you know, government are making decisions, spending money left, right and centre. Here in Wales, of course, we know it's devolved, but we get billions of pounds from Westminster, the UK Treasuries, all of our tax money. And that wastage has gone, and yet no one bats an eyelid. No one says anything. And you're thinking, this is crazy. You could have spent 166 million in making businesses safe, COVID, you know, safe. So, and gyms in particular, we mentioned tonight, and places where people can interact. And they could have spent that money on the economy in a different way, rather than the hospitals that they never even used. They never used it.
They've done the same here with the private hospitals. They never used them. It was a joke, and that sort of. And what annoyed me as well after in March here, the weather was brilliant, so they locked down. Everyone thought it was great. Everyone was getting €350 a week. They were having barbecues. It was 20 degrees. They thought this is great. And but what I tweeted about it at the time was, at that time they came up with billions at the drop of a hat. Right, we need to give everybody €350, but yet they couldn't invest in mental health services here in the country. They couldn't invest in the hospitals. For every winter, for as long as I can remember, we've had patients on trolleys in hallways.
Every winter. That's every winter, every year.
Every winter here, So, so what's the difference here?
Well, have you noticed, come to Kai there, have you noticed that no one's died of flu this year either? It's been influenza and flu.
Flu and pneumonia are gone. They don't exist anymore.
Tell us about that, Kai. Tell us about that.
Well, if you look at the medical statistics, flu and pneumonia in 2020, it is gone from the planet. We don't have influenza or pneumonia anymore. They've been wiped from the medical records. Nobody contracted influenza or pneumonia through the entire of 2020 into the early part of 2021, according to statistics, because everything is smacked down as COVID-19. But what I wanted to pick up on something that Claire said before she left us, and this is something that we have to consider. We are now, as a society, United Kingdom Ireland, and countries around the world are facing a Herculean effort, almost like post-Second World War type effort to rebuild society, to rebuild our way of life. But my concern, I know Claire has a lot of faith in humanity, and I do too, from, because of what I do as a vocation. But I've never seen a generation or generations living at one time where there has been such an active campaign by government, media, other sources, social media, to literally demoralize every area of society. And I don't think society has the fight in them. When I think of my grandparents, my grandfather fought in the Second World War, my grandmother worked on the Land Army. When the war was over, they had that spirit. But we're in a generation we're living in a time where generations, especially in the last 11 months, with the nonsense that we've seen broadcast, BBC, Sky News, every news channel, you mention it on social media, shut down, wiped out, conservative voices that are asking questions, just deplatformed overnight. My concern is there's been such a concerted effort to remove the spirit of society, that when it comes time to the fact that we now do have to rebuild, that we do have to emerge from the cocoon that we've been in for however long and become the butterfly that society could have been, there's going to be nothing left in the tank for anybody to tap into. And unless we do something, and this is why I keep saying, and I know Claire doesn't quite agree with me, but government governs by consent. And we have seen in the UK, in Ireland, for the last 12 months, them governing on actions without the consent of the people, without scrutiny by the people. In Wales alone, they pushed through measures under the emergency powers that had nothing to do with the COVID vaccine, using emergency legislation to circumvent the political process, to lower the voting age, to try and give votes to prisoners serving less than 4 years, to give votes to foreign nationals. I'm not against people being allowed to vote, but that's not necessary legislation. So there is a political agenda behind this, and I truly believe society is suffering because of a handful of elites when you compare it to the number of people that are not being furloughed on. I mean, there's not a politician in Westminster, in Dublin, in Cardiff Bay, in Scotland that has had one day where they've not been paid a full salary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so politicians still getting paid big fat salaries. Now, here's the thing I want to say as well. You got celebrities still jetting off, traveling the world. They're doing TV shows left, right, and centre. You got footballers. I'm not against footballers. Obviously, we got an ex-footballer on here as well. Paid very, very well. I noticed this week. I'm a Spurs fan, Gary. If you didn't know. Yeah. Shocking at the minute, but we won't go there. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, your say out and all that. But well, Liverpool are doing very well either at the minute, are they? As to some of our followers on here. But I was going to say, you see these people with money and celebrities. It's like Piers Morgan is an example. Piers Morgan, he's going to Antigua and then he's criticising lockdown measures, and you see all these people. It's like they're living in a different world to us. Politicians and celebrities seem to be getting on with life and enjoying themselves. I say enjoy themselves, doing normal things, but the rest of us little people, no, stay at home, protect the NHS. I mean, did you think that's fair?
They've no skin in the game.
No,
they've no skin in the game. They don't. Exactly. They're not affected. They get these guys. Kids are probably getting privately schooled at home. They get to go to work every day. It's like you look at Prince Charles. God love him. His father's going to die. He was allowed into the hospital last night to see him. Like I don't know what the rules are, but over here you're not allowed in. People are dying, you're not allowed in. It's ridiculous. And to touch on what you said earlier, big man, on the scaremongering that's going on. When I was out for a run this morning, and I was running towards a lady. She was out walking in the fresh air. I was running down by the sea with a mask on, and as I ran towards her, she put her hand over her face and she turned into the trees as I ran past her. And I was like, wow. I'm like, I must be like a leper running around this place. But this is, and that's a generation of people over here that watch the 6-1 news every night, and boom, first headlines. There's been 28 deaths and there's another 1,000 cases, and And this is what we're dealing with. It's like, it's horrendous. They're scared out of their wits. Like I've even had arguments with my father-in-law about it. I'm like, I'm saying to him, well, what about me? What about your grandkids?
Yeah.
Like I need to open my business. Who's going to, like, we bought our gym. It's an old secondary school. We've got a mortgage on it. We've got a mortgage on the house. Like, how that 12 months, we're closed a year. We're closed a year.
Yeah.
And we're getting 200 quid a week. Like, 200 quid a week, by the time you put food on the table, you might have enough to buy yourself a pack of chewing gum. But, you know, you have that, and then you add on to the mental health and the physical health of not just my children, by the way, all the children everywhere. Like, it's just, it's shocking. And I'm fed up of it. I really am.
Well, listen, on that note, Gary and Lee Catherine and Kai Dewar and the rest of our guests, well, our time is almost up. We've been going for like an hour and a half, I think it is. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Lee Catherine for coming on. I really appreciate the sweetheart. And thank you.
Anytime. Pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
And Gary, thank you ever so much. You are a star. And we're all following you on Twitter, mate. We're all keeping an eye on your journey, and hopefully the Irish government will take note of what you're saying, because you are speaking for the forgotten numbers of us. As we said at the start of this programme, there's a lot of us out there that aren't sick, vulnerable and elderly. We're just hardworking, ordinary folks. You know, we're paying mortgages, paying our bills and our taxes, and we've been forgotten. And I think that's an important message, really. And when it comes to, you know, the future, you know, whatever the government decides to do, I know on tomorrow, Monday, Boris is giving his, you know, his national address on a roadmap, apparently, out of the lockdown. But of course, for us in Ireland and in Wales, we lived under devolved administrations. You know, what Boris says doesn't affect us in that respect. But, you know, to all of our viewers as well, you know, if you're struggling, if you're really struggling, you know, you're not alone in this, are you? Yeah. Listen, we're all in this together. It is hard. It is difficult. And while we can shout at the TV screen and we can agree or disagree, you can be against vaccinations, for it, hate the government, love the government. You can be a Labour voter, Conservative, DUP in Gary's case, or any other, or the Sinn Féin. Listen, what matters is your family. Look after your family. Look after the people that are closest to you, because at the end of the day, what have you got if you haven't got family? They're the ones that matter the most, not politicians, not celebrities. It's your mother, your father, your auntie, your uncle, your cousin, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter. That's what matters the most. And look around you. You're probably more blessed than you realized, and keep that thought in mind as well. I just want to say thank you guys for coming on tonight.
Lovely.
And Rich, my parting message.
Yes.
What I always say, I'm a big advocate for mental health on Twitter. And what you're saying there to the guys, to the viewers, ultimately, it's going to be us that fixes it. Yeah. So we need to, we do need to stick together, because they're not going to fix it. It's going to come down to us, and we're going to have to fix it. So keep the faith. I'll keep pushing on as much as I can at my end. And let's see where we end up. But keep the heads. Don't be thinking about doing that in daft. My DMs on Twitter are always open if anyone wants to talk or send me a message or anything like that for a chat. But it's going to come down to us to fix it. So keep the faith.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Can I just say something?
Yeah,
as
of course you can. Yes.
Sorry. What Gary just said, my inbox is always open as well. I'm happy to do a Zoom call, a chat with anybody if they're struggling. I know you said, Rich, you know, your family are the most important. There are some people without family, and we've got to be family to each other, because it's not just about blood at the moment. We are all in this together. So if anybody is struggling, as Gary's just said, his inbox is always open. Slide into his DMs, slide into mine. I'm more than happy to spend time on a Zoom call, on a phone chat with anybody who's struggling. I really am.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. And Kai, any final words from you before we close the broadcast tonight?
The thing that made the United Kingdom great, and the thing that made Ireland as a nation great, is our sense of community. And
yes.
they have tried to take that from us. But today, we make the decision to take it back. And it is our community. So it is our choice. And we will be back better than ever before.
Amen.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that, Kai. And thank you to all of my guests tonight, and for you, more importantly, that have tuned in, because without you, there wouldn't be a show. You, the people that make it. So thank you for tuning to Rich Politics. Don't forget, we're live every Friday, Wednesday, and Sunday nights. Make sure you tune in, subscribe to the channel on YouTube to get all the latest videos, which is more important. Subscribe to the channel because that's how you support the work that we're doing. This is a weekly broadcast, non-politically correct, a Welshman ranting about all things politics. And I'm glad you've tuned in, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode here on Rich Politics.